Okay, so I'll just put a disclaimer at the start of this video and say that when you're watching this, don't try and get it, don't try and understand it, don't try and think about it. Don't assume that I'm talking about something that I understand I've got that you're looking for in your own experience, because this isn't an experience and it can't be got because it's already can't be got by you because it's already got. It's not possible that you're going to understand this with the sense of what feels like you, with the thinking mind. What I'm talking about is what is already in the absence of the you that it's experiencing. So you'll never have the experience of getting this. You'll never have the experience of understanding this in the way that the self, the me, the subject, relates to its own reality. This is completely different. It's more of a relinquishment of the me, the subject, that understands, that has the experience, that the experience is happening to. It's more of a forgetting of the need to understand and letting the inherent knowingness that already knows, that already or doesn't need to understand, is beyond that, come forth as the experience, as what already is, without the one experiencing. And going through this, it might be the case that there will be there will be you'll see things about the nature of what you thought you were that can be disturbing to that individual. You'll possibly experience emotions of an intensity that you're not used to. But just stay with what is. Stay with the knowingness that you are, that includes all of the thoughts about it. And just see what is a thought, what is belief, and what is actually here, including the thoughts. See what deeper structures of thought there are that suggest there has to be a me for there to be an experience. Okay. So unfortunately I don't have the time to sit today and film, so it's gonna have to be crappy propped up car camera this time. I'm gonna struggle to find time to film videos in the coming while, because I got 2 kids now and things are progressing in my career, so it just means that I'm busy. But someone asked me to talk about non-separation or zero distance, non-duality, as perceived let's say, in the senses, in immediate sensory experience. And as I've said a bunch of times, this is something that makes no sense to the mind. Is essentially beyond the limits or capability of the mind, so it creates this kind of weird, seemingly disjointed experience initially, where the mind seems to be stalling, the mind seems to be struggling to catch up, or struggling to try and interpret something which is completely beyond its ability to interpret. So there's this kind of relaxing, this kind of sensory immersion, to the point where the conceptual mind is forgotten about, but it thinks it's experienced something, because that's what it does. It tries to collect experiences and then use that experience to put into a context, which it then uses to relate to its sense of reality. The sense of reality that it thinks inherently belongs to itself as the subject of experience. So this non-dual recognition is, by definition, not an experience, because it's what's left in the absence of the one who is experiencing. So again, by definition, it can't be described as an experience. It doesn't make sense as an experience. All the mind can do is try and frame that in its own contextual reality, its own limited framework, and that comes off as an experience of something really weird. And it always frames itself as the interpreter, the one that relates to something. And that's a subtle suggestion of separation from experience. If there is an experience, that suggests the experiencer. Because in the view of the mind, there can't be an experience, there can't be a reality without the one that relates to it. These are the obstructions that obscure this recognition. And it gets down to a more subtle and a kind of deeper layer of thought. A layer of thought that's overlaid on top of sensory experience, let's say, that makes it look like a subject-object relationship, that makes it seem inherently like that's what's happening and that's what is real. The sense of someone or something looking out at a world which is separate from it. That's the fundamental duality. But now it's essential, I think, to be able or to have seen through the illusion of that to which the thoughts refer, the belief, the identification with what the thoughts are saying, what the thoughts are suggesting as content, at least in the overt mental narrative of the narrative self, of the individual speaker of the mind, the thinker of thoughts. that initial layer has been broken, and it can be seen that thoughts are non-dual in nature. Thoughts appear as this infinite mystery in the moment within it, or as it. Thoughts manifest and are not separate from that unknowable presence, that knowingness, that awareness, which we now know is our fundamental essence, beyond the person or including the person. It's that what the thoughts are suggesting as a something real that is an obstruction, not the thoughts themselves. The thoughts themselves are just transient apparitions that seem to refer to the world, which is also a transient apparition, to give it kind of consistency, continuity, relatability, reality. So we know that the answer isn't in thought as it describes reality in an obvious way, but there's another description of reality that is subscribed to that is much more fundamental, much more fast to suggest, much more just a suggestion, just a lens that we're looking through that makes reality seem a certain way, any way at all, regardless if it looks like non-dual reality, if it looks like enlightenment, if it looks like anything whatsoever as an interpretation. This recognition is non-interpretable. It doesn't happen in time or space or to anyone. So you can just let go of the need to interpret, the need to gather, to not just be immersed in this sensory experience without the need for an experiencer separate from it that interprets it and tries to organise it and make sense of it. That's the obstruction here. That's the limiting nature of the mind. Any belief in what the mind suggests is a reflection of something that's infinitely unknowable. The substance of the thought itself is itself infinitely unknowable and always appears as an apparition in non-dual reality, which is completely unfindable. It doesn't relate, it doesn't say anything or mean anything real. And this non-dual recognition is just the deepening of that initial insight. Just these deeper thought structures we're able to access, and then they fall away or they're seen through. And the thought structures that I'm referring to is that in some way anything in our experience, anything at all, is somehow separate from what we are. Even the idea that we are anything is the obstruction. How can it be that anything in our experience, anything at all, anything sensed, is not us, is not what we are? So you could say that, as far as I can see, everything I hear, everything I touch, everything I think is what I am. But because of the totality of that insight, it can't be said by the mind that there is anything there, that there is a thing. You could say that all of this appears within your knowingness, your mind. All of this appears within you. But that wouldn't make sense either, because there is no outside to this. inside and outside don't make sense. In the direct sensory experience, is there anything other than a thought that suggests any of this is separate? Any of this has inherent reality as a thing? Any of this is at a distance? If you are the awareness, the knowingness that knows, let's say, your experience, then does that knowingness, that awareness, know separation or distance? Does it know anything other than the totality of this experience all at once? As a kind of singularity, a unified singularity that can't even be called single because there's no other. So when we're looking out onto the world, is there a movement outwards? Is there a subtle suggestion that there is a looking out? That I'm pointing my attention from this singular point, maybe through this window, from a point of awareness that's back here, behind the eyes or something, in the head, in the brain. Is that a movement of thought, yet a very subtle one? Does that come after or added to the immediate experience of the seen or the heard? Is the idea that I'm here and that's over there merely an idea? Can you become clear on the function of thought that's happening in the moment that suggests that makes it look seemingly definitely like that there is something over there, that over there is an object separate from everything else? That's something I know as this. Anytime we see an object as an object, it assumes that the reality of that which is seeing, that knows, in the sense of the mind. Does the seeing know an object? Or is that a thought? Does the seeing know that there's a seer here? Or is that a thought? So, when we look at something, does it really feel like we're looking at an object in a physical world at a distance from ourselves? See if you can look at that object and know that it's known by you. There is an awareness of it. It is aware of itself through you. And then from that object, in a, say, linear fashion, trace that knowingness, trace that awareness, follow it back from the object to what feels like what you are, and see if there's anything there. See if there's any distance there, see if there's any separation there between what you feel like you are back here and what that is in terms of the awareness of it, the knowingness of it. See if there's actually any distance there. We assume a space in between me and that, but that's never there in experience. That space, that air in between, is never actually there. It's a thought, it's an assumption. Where is that object you're looking at, the shapes, the colours? And where are you? See, when the thought comes in, and it's a different type of thought, it's more of an immediate assumption. See, when the thought comes in that assumes and makes things look like separate things. Isn't it funny how you've never seen something separate from the totality of reality? The totality of the seeming external world from whatever angle or multiple angles. Seeming multiple angles. Nothing can ever be seen separate because it's not separate. There's no such thing as an individual object. An object is a mere thought, is a mere interpretation of infinite, unknowable, non-dual reality. Anything that seems conclusive, that seems just the way it is a thought, is an interpretation. So I noticed early on with this, that when I was looking at an object, if I looked away, there would be a tracer, there would be a mind image imprint of that object that I just looked at that followed along briefly in experience, and it could be recalled, but it seemed to happen automatically when I was looking at an object. If I closed my eyes, there would be the image that I was looking at in my head, seemingly printed into the space behind the eyes. And then I noticed that those thoughts, those interpretations, those assumptions about what something is and where it is in relation to me were present throughout the experience of looking. That didn't look like anything other than what I was looking at. It looked exactly like the visual sense, looked exactly like an object. But I realised that all it could know was its own objective reality imposed onto something that was completely mysterious. And then when I asked, where is that? Where am I? It started to get to a point where the weird mystery of the visual experience, the fact that I could see something that seemed to be over there. I was aware of this seeming object over there, but I was aware of it here in the visual field. Over there and over here stopped making sense because awareness was just awareness. The knowingness was just the knowingness, and it was knowing itself. It was looking at itself. In the absence of these mind-based assumptions about over here and over there. I couldn't find where it was. I couldn't find the me here and that over there, or an in between. And this assumed distance just stopped making sense. The mind kept trying to get it. It kept trying to go wait, and trying to understand it. And that's where the massive amount of fear came from, because it was confronted with something it couldn't deal with. It was confronted with a spatial paradox that was in experience very obvious, but it couldn't frame that into a satisfying, conclusive, stable reality. And I got the sense of, people say they get the sense of reality becoming two-dimensional, as in that distance closing. I got a bit of that, but what was weird about it was this assumed window here got kind of pushed through, and there was a clarity when the window wasn't there, and it was like my mind expanded out of, in the visual sense, out of my eyes into this immediate sensory visual experience. It's very hard to describe. So everything came closer. Everything was clearer. I could see how my mind was everywhere, if that makes sense. Even the thoughts weren't just in here. The thoughts were there, saying object, imposing themselves onto what seemed like a three-dimensional reality. And then as that clarity of visual experience started to overtake what the mind was suggesting about it, I forgot myself as a subject, and I can't even describe what this is without the presence of a subject. It's indescribable. But it's not like it's something other than what we're always looking at. So it's mysterious yet familiar at the same time. It never makes sense to the mind. Never. The mind can't believe it. You have to leave the mind behind. You have to leave that sense of you, the subject, the one who is interpreting. That has to be left behind. And the sensory experience overtakes. And what's there is not a world, not a you in a world, not objects, not time, not space. You can't even say it's anything as an interpretation, as a label, but it's clearly here, it's clearly is. It's so mysterious, it's so bizarre. And you see how you simultaneously also see your stories, your interpretations, your assumptions about things and people and how you relate to them as a person. And then you actually see them for what they are, which is not separate from you. An immense mystery, immense aliveness, to the point where the person, the me, is entirely overwhelmed, is entirely reduced to a series of consequential reactions that have accumulated a kind of illusion. The illusion says that I am separate from this, I relate to this, I am me, I understand. And it's the scariest thing for the separate self when faced with something it can't understand. So in a sense it just has to disappear. But the weird thing about it is that it doesn't disappear. It is seen for what it is. It's seen for you see it for what it's actually made of, which is infinitely unknowable itself. It's infinitely non-dual, not separate from. And there's a kind of joke in there. There's a kind of playfulness in there, a lightness, a beauty, a profound love that just demolishes or dissolves all of the patterns of resistance that we had directed towards our sense of who and what we are, who and what this is, and none of it matters anymore. And we see that truly none of this can be captured by anything. It's complete freedom. It's freedom like the mind can't believe. And we see that what we thought we were is just lost in this. It's just lost, it's just immersed in this infinite unknowability, this infinite mystery. And it never had its place like it thought it did. It never existed like it thought it did. It was always just this. But if you look at anything in your experience, just ask yourself, that colour, that shape, where does that appear for you? In your knowingness of that, that's not really yours anyway, but in the knowingness of that feels like me, in the awareness of that feels like me, where is that? Where does that appear? Are you aware of it here or there, or in the actual awareness of it? Do here and there make any sense at all? Is it just where it is, which isn't particularly anywhere, but it definitely is somewhere? Doesn't have to be anywhere. Same with the sounds. If you close your eyes and listen, are you projecting a mind-based image of space and a mind-based image of sounds local to this person here that's hearing the sounds? Does that need to be there for the sounds to be? Does there need to be a me hearing in a space and a me hearing this or that for the actual sound to be there? Or is the sound just already there? Is it even anywhere? If you get a sense, are you getting the sense for this? Are you kind of, if you're trying this in your own experience and there's something and you're like, I know what you're talking about, that's so weird, but then watch for this trying to understand it, trying to go for conclusions, trying to say it is this way. It's not anyway. That's what's so weird about it. It's an ongoing, infinitely unknowable. It's not something you're going to get. It's not something you're going to look at and say, I clicked on Nondual. The mind can say that, but the actual experience of it is nothing like that. It's not something that's going to be captured in a satisfying way for the me that is experiencing it. It's not an experience. If that makes sense. Probably doesn't. I'll go this way. But yeah, try that out in your own experience and see if you can get in touch with that knowingness that you know yourself to be, that paradoxical presence, that paradoxical awareness. It's all encompassing and knows it itself, and then just follow that into the senses and watch for a belief that comes from the mind that says something is a certain way, something is here, something is there, something is a this, something is a that. Anyway, I need to go. Talk to you next time. Hope that's helpful.